Hello, my name is Scarlett and I run a small business called AFRAYED Upcycling. I take secondhand textiles and make size inclusive, unique, maximalist clothing and accessories. And did you know on the 6th of September, 2 years ago, I introduced my first tea towel into my work, and it was this wonderful Heinz ketchup tea towel dress. And now I'm completely tea towel obsessed. I have over 175, probably close to 200 tea towels at this point, all ready to be made into gorgeous items. I am basically tea towelifying everything that I make, basically. I'm even wearing the tea towel skirt that I made for my YouTube tutorial. So here it is. So if you want to make that, then there is a video for that. But I get so many questions about when I'm releasing my dolly and Tammy dress styles. So here's the dolly dress style and here's the Tammy dress style. The dolly dress, I'm currently working on a pattern course, so it is going to take me some time. So it is coming, but I don't have a timeline yet because I am trying to learn how to do it myself rather than getting a grader to do it for me. So I'm sorry you have to wait a little bit longer. But if you don't want to wait, I am planning to, in this tutorial, it's going to be a two-part tutorial. I'm going to show you how to transform your favourite t-shirt, take the pattern from that and make your own Tammy style dress. And we're going to try and draft a ruffle sleeve as well with that. I'm going to say this is going to be a beginner-friendly tutorial. I'm going to try my hardest to explain every step. I'm not a professional grader yet, so please bear with me if I do get some things wrong. So in part one, we are going to copy the pattern of your favourite t-shirt and then get all the measurements to make the pattern of the Tammy style dress. And we're also going to draft the ruffle sleeve in this one. And then in the next part, we're going to discuss fabrics and making the dress. Yes. But anyway, this is going to be a really exciting tutorial, probably very long overdue. So let's crack on. For this part, we are going to need the t-shirt, a fabric marker, pins, a ruler. You don't need something fancy like this, just a normal standard ruler will do. You need some fabric scissors, tape measure, and some scrap fabric. So a tablecloth, some old bedding, anything that's quite plain, something easy to trace the pattern on. And then you need some paper. Again, you don't need a massive roll like this. If you want to just stick A4 sheets together, US letter sheets together, that is fine. And I think that's everything we need for this part. Right, so you want to put the t-shirt on. This is my one, so it is quite oversized. You don't want it too tight because that way it won't pass your shoulders, because we are using just woven fabrics. And if that is the case, you would need to add a fastening, but this is a fastening-less dress, so ideally something with a bit of ease at the sides. Now the first thing we need to do is determine where we want the skirt part to start. So if you want it to start at the waist, you can either just measure, jot down the measurement, but I'm going to use pins just because I prefer it that way. Some people might want it right at the waist, but I'm going to have mine just under the bust, so about here, just because I think that shape looks a bit better on me. But it's totally up to you. You could even go for a dropped waist. That would be quite cool. Be careful not to accidentally pin yourself. Once you've done your waist pins, you're going to need to put a pin at the side seam. So if you can, try and follow it round. If not, just put it where you think is most comfortable. So this doesn't feel very professional. I'm sorry. Okay, am I happy with that? Yeah, I mean, we're going to clean it up when we get to the actual tracing and paper part. But yeah, I'm happy with that. Here's a good time to determine where you want your ruffle sleeve to start. So you can either follow the seam of the t-shirt. So if you did add a little ruffle, it will probably come out like this. Or if you wanted to bring it closer to the neckline and you want it more standing up, then you can do that. So I think I might bring it so it's literally like on the shoulder. So I'm just going to put a pin where I want that. So probably about here. Perfect. So you should have your pins here, side and shoulder. So let's take the t-shirt off and we're going to start tracing it onto the bedsheet or scrap fabric. Let's go. So lay your t-shirt out flat like this, and then you want to grab your scrap fabric. Let's see if this fits. And you want it to be able to cover the entire front of your pattern piece. So this part does. And then what you want to do is you're going to want to start to pin along the seams of your t-shirt. So let's start to do that. See what's in here? Make sure you get all of the points where the seams are joining. So where you've got your sleeve, so where the sleeve meets the side seam, make sure you just corner that off with a pin. To make it a lot quicker, usually when you've done that, you can usually feel where the seam is. So you can do that as well. Make it easier, I've only just pinned up until halfway on the front of the top, and we'll be doing that for the back as well. But here is all of the pinned parts. So I've just gone along the front like this, and then for this part I've only gone along the seam line, so not the little ribbing that or trimming that you see here. And so all of the seams have been pinned, and then if I feel around I can feel the pins from under the bust and side seam. So I'm just going to grab some more pins and put them where they are. Once you've done that, grab your pen marker and then just do a little rough guide of where you've done your pins. Again, we're going to clear this up when we transfer it to paper, but it's really good to get an idea of the shape. When you get to your pins, just try and follow it. Obviously, the side seam is a little bit higher than the front seam, so I'm just gonna do a nice smooth curve for that. Fabulous. Now let's take out all the pins, and then we should have a nice front pattern piece. I completely forgot about the shoulder seam, so I've just put that over the top like that and then just fold it around, and then I'm just gonna alter that by bringing it into the armhole like that. Okay, so let's move the t-shirt. We are then going to cut along this draft line. Fabulous. So that's how it should look, and this is a technique that I use for pretty much any pattern that I want to copy. So I usually trace it on a bit of scrap fabric and then make adjustments along the way. So we're going to do the exact same thing for the back, but as I've not taken any measurements, I am just going to feel around for the bust measurements and then just add an extra 1.5 inches and just square it off, and then we will fix that at the paper stage. So let's copy this part. Okay, so you should have two pattern pieces like this. So you've got your front and your back. And obviously if we were to actually make this up into a pattern, things wouldn't match up, obviously, because we've altered the shoulder length here. We've altered the side seam length here. So now we're going to grab some paper and start tracing the front pattern piece first. I have folded my paper in half and I am just going to trace around this with pencil, pen, whatever you prefer. I've just quickly gone over it with a marker just so it's more visible on the camera. Then what you're going to do is we're going to then add our seam allowances. So this is going to be a fully lined bodice. So we're just going to do a 1 centimeter seam allowance all around here, but then when you get to the hem we're going to add 1.5 centimeters. If you have a normal ruler or a tape measure, just follow the line like this, or if you have a pattern master, there are inbuilt seam allowances along the edges, which is very helpful. Just a quick note, when you get to your side seam, you don't want the pattern piece to be pointed up. So if you can, just square it off. It won't make that much of a difference when it comes to making the dress. So this is all 1 centimeter, and then for this one we're going to do 1.5 centimeters. So this is your front pattern piece. Then we're going to cut this pattern piece out. So I'm going to pin it just because every time I do cut it out, the paper underneath always moves. So I'm just going to pin and then cut. Right, so this is how the piece should look like. Voila. If you notice that this has like a weird like upside down love heart shape, I would just smooth it out. So just cut it off and just smooth it out. So we're going to grab your back piece, wherever that is, and then just do the exact same. So I'm going to do that now. So I've traced this quite roughly onto the paper, and then before we start doing seam allowance and things like that, we're going to make our alterations. So grab your front piece, and then the first thing we're going to do is measure this sleeve, this shoulder seam, sorry, and then that needs to all match up. And also this is your seam line, this is your seam line. So when you go to measure, you need to measure this line here. So let's do all of this. So that is bang on 7 centimeters. So because we shortened it from the shoulder point, we are going to do the same here. So 7 centimeters gives us about there. And then what you can do is you can then draw your new seam line. So I like to start about just over halfway. So something like that. Then we're going to want to measure this side seam and do the same for here. So that is bang on. That's actually, yeah, 11.2, but I'm just going to make it 11. About here. Then I'm just going to square off this line. We've made our alterations. We are going to do the same seam allowances. So 1 centimeter here, 1 centimeter here, including this. This is the new seam line. So let's just scribble that out. Centimeter here, and 1.5 centimeters here. If you want to, before cutting out, just double check that the seams match up. So again, seam line, and then just trace that, fab. And then with this one, perfect. Before grabbing your paper, you're going to determine where you want your ruffle to start and finish. So I like it to start sort of midway here, and then on the back I just want it to, yeah, the same midway. So I put little notches in. We are just going to measure this seam here, this seam here, and also the width that you want your ruffle sleeve. So I'm just going to round that up, so that's about 14.5 centimeters. This is about 11 centimeters. From the shoulder point, I'm just going to measure literally from there. If you are keeping the dropped shoulder, then just measure it a little bit lower on the shoulder, but mine's pretty much on the shoulder point, and I think 13 centimeters, 12 centimeters. Let's do 12 centimeters. Once you have your paper, draw a long straight line. We are going to measure this part here on your front pattern piece. So that is, oh, that's 14.5 centimeters as well. So if you just square off, this line. So from here, we're going to measure 14.5 and just do a little notch. Then you are going to take this measurement, your front measurement, and you are going to double that and measure it from this notch. So that is going to be 29 centimeters, because 14.5 times 2 is 29. Then with your back piece, you're going to take this top measurement and times that by 2. So that is going to be 22 centimeters for me. And you're just going to double notch it, just so you know this is going to be the back ruffle, this is going to be the front ruffle. And then with your back piece, again, we're going to measure this here from your notches. That is 15 centimeters. Oh, I've just got enough bit of paper. So 15 centimeters. Then from your middle notch, this is your shoulder seam notch. So the measurement that you took for how wide you want the ruffle, we're going to do that here. So I think I said 12 centimeters. So we're just going to do a little mark here. And then when you get to the two sides, this is going to go under the arm, and I usually just half it. So whatever this measurement is, half it. So this is going to be 6 centimeters. So we're going to measure here, 6, and then you're going to want to square this off first before measuring. And then 6 centimeters is there. Fabulous. Now that you've got these marks, we are just going to draw a nice smooth curve. Then we're going to need to add our seam allowances. So we're going to have a 1 centimeter seam allowance, because this is going to be connecting to the armhole. A centimeter seam allowance on both sides, and then I am planning to hem this sleeve by just overlocking and stitching. So I'm only going to do a centimeter hem, but if you wanted to do a double hem, then maybe you want to add 2 centimeters. So let's go ahead and add all of these seam allowances in. Okay, so well done. You have drafted a front pattern piece, a back pattern piece and a sleeve pattern piece. If you wanted to, you could make a very rough copy of this out of actual fabric, try it on and make any amendments. But if not, let's move on to making the skirt pattern piece. To make the skirt part of your dress, we need to get the measurement from the end of the bodice that you've just done to whereabouts you want it on your body. I want to add a 6-inch ruffle because I love a ruffle. So I am going to measure, so mine was just under the bust, which is about here, and then step on your tape measure because this is going to make it a lot easier. This was recommended by someone who commented. And then I want the tea towel to finish about 27 inches. Yes. Alternatively, if you grab your tea towel and just put it up against you, and if you're happy with that, then just follow the measurements of your tea towel basically. So I think I'm going to take a couple inches off of this, and then I should have a more of a midi dress if I add the 6-inch ruffle. Okay, if you would prefer to grab some paper and actually make a physical pattern, then you can. For my business, I just use these little size indicator marks. So I'm just gonna use that basically. So I think I measured 27 inches for the tea towel. So I want to have as much of the tea towel in as possible. That's perfect. Okay, that is, to this black border around here, it is basically 27 inches. I'm just going to add an extra inch, probably half an inch to both ends to include a seam allowance. So people might want to measure, but I am just going to eyeball it because we're so professional around here. For your front pattern piece, this is going to be a gathered skirt. So if you want, you can literally just measure this line, double it or times it by 1.5, and then that is going to be your width of your skirt piece. But as someone who uses tea towels, one of the tricks that I use is I don't want this to be very distorted, because if you start gathering it, her face looks a little weird. So what I usually do is I take about let's measure. I take like maybe 7 inches or so off the gathered length. That way I can just gather the sides a lot more, and then when it comes to actually gathering this tea towel, it's just going to be slightly gathered, not in half gathered, if you get what I mean. So to do this, I'm just going to measure this. Also, I'm really sorry, I notice I do flick between the inches and centimetres. It's just something that I've always done. I just find like the big numbers are helpful for like big things, and centimetres are best for accurate things. Does that make any sense? So roughly 12 inches. So I would times that by 2. I do it from my table, yes, and then I grab a bit of tape. So what I usually do is I line the tea towel up to that marker that you've just done here, like that. And then what I do is I know that this is going to be my pattern piece for the skirt. So when it comes to adding materials, which we will do in part 2, I know that I'll be filling in this piece, and then once I have patchworked this piece, I will flip it and know that I will need to fill in this piece. And the front and back won't be too different, so I am just going to use the exact same measurements. So this is just going to be ×2 basically for your pattern piece. But if you did want to do it on paper, then you want to measure this piece here and then the length of your tea towel. And then for the skirt ruffle, again, I don't have a pattern piece for it, so I just know that when I go to make the big pattern piece, I will do about 7.5 inches to make the width of the ruffle, and then I know that I will need to make it long enough. I hope that makes sense. I'm hoping this will be a lot easier when it comes to the materials part, but yes. Right, so this is the end of part 1. So you should have been able to trace your favourite t-shirt and with that make your 3 pattern pieces. We've also including drafting a sleeve pattern piece, which is going to create a nice ruffle. And if you want to make the paper pattern for the skirt part of your dress, then do so before moving to part 2. So yeah, let's start picking out fabrics and making the dress. I'll see you in part 2.